The question that remains unanswered is, what are we doing to improve road safety in Uganda, both in our individual capacity and as a nation?
How can you, as a frequent road user, ensure that you stay safe on the road? The good news is that some corporate companies and key stakeholders that are making deliberate efforts to confront and address the issues of road safety in Uganda are here. And here to talk about an annual initiative that seeks to improve road safety is the Managing Director of Vivo Energy, that is Uganda, Mr. Gilbert Asi. And we're also joined by Mr. Ronald Amanyire, the Secretary of the National Road Safety Council from the Ministry of Works and Transport. Welcome to Morning at NTV. Good morning.
Good morning.
You usually up by this time? Today's yeah. Okay, nice. Good morning. Nice to have you. This is the first time that Vivo Energy is being part of initiatives to make sure that roads are safe in the country. So, for starters, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Asi. Why is it that you're very, very concerned with Ugandans on the road, and why is it that every single time we hear of things like Twedeco, Vivo Energy is part of it? Why are you so concerned? Did you just sell us the fuel, and let's move on?
Thank you very much. This is actually not the first time that Vivo Energy is involved in initiatives to improve road safety in Uganda, and that's because road safety is an area of concern for our company. We have a road transport activity that is quite important. We have a lot of trucks, like around 300 trucks every day on the roads, and we have learned through the years that we need to improve on our road safety, and we have implemented processes, procedures, training, which we believe we should share. That's why we have road safety as one of our key focus areas when it comes to our corporate social investment and responsibility, and we're really keen to share that and that experience and make sure that we contribute to improving road safety in Uganda.
All right. Mr. Ronald, this is not the first time that we're having the Road Safety Summit. So for someone who's just jumping on board and getting to know about this summit, just tell us briefly what it's all about.
Thank you. The summit, the Road Safety Summit, we started with it last year. Last year we had a summit, and the theme was road safety, time for accountability. So this year, which is tomorrow, we are going to have time for action, road safety time for action. And what we are saying basically is that people have to take responsibility, they have to take action, proactive action, proactive, deliberate interventions to make sure that they are safe on the roads. You start with pedestrians, you talk about motorcyclists, you talk about vehicle owners, bus drivers, taxi drivers. They need to act. If you don't act, then you will die. And that is really, it would be very unfortunate, because we're here to save people's lives, we're here to protect people's lives. As a government, as a country, as companies, everyone should feel safe on the road. And therefore, when each of us protects ourselves, then the rest will feel safe.
All right. Yeah. What informed the decision to have a summit, a road safety summit? Many argue that whenever we are having these summits, conferences, dialogues, I mean, it's just as good as that. People, the elite meeting in one room, having conversations, jargon being thrown left, right, center. But the public always say that this does not, the deliberations never trickle down to us, and we never see the changes on ground. So from the first summit, what were you able to tangibly realize out of that, Mr. Asi?
Yes, actually this summit is really aimed at ending up with actions. We're talking about actionable decisions that each stakeholder is going to make and held accountable for. What we mean is, at the end of this summit, all the key stakeholders and participants will go with actions, and at next year's edition they will account for those actions. I agree, we used to have summits and discussions, but this time we are going to target a specific area of intervention, and we are jointly going to choose that area and have actions towards that challenge and account for it next year.
Okay.
What is the current situation of road safety here in Uganda? Of course, every single day you will see a certain percentage or statistics being released in the paper, or you're listening to radio and there's a statistic being read. But what is actually on ground? How are we doing? How bad are we doing? or how good are we doing?
How good are we doing? We're not doing well. The police report for last year indicated that around 3,600 people died on our roads, and the number of fatalities is the ultimate measure of road safety in a country. So if you have, it doesn't matter what other accidents, even if you have, let's say you have 3,000 accidents and then you have 3,600 fatalities from those 3,000 accidents, then you're not doing well.
Yeah.
So, and this trend has been rising for the past 4 years, and a lot of it is really indiscipline by road users, and that's what we need to. Our action area is about road users, how to ensure safer road users, how do they protect themselves. That's our topic of discussion tomorrow, and the situation is really not good, and we need to improve it. We have no way out. There's no two ways about it. It has to improve one way or the other.
All right. So in terms of your planning, how are you able to get it right? Because in terms of statistics, we still have disparities. The police report, clearly said that, every single year we're losing around 3,500, 3,600 people on our roads. WHO also, Makerere University did a research, of course, under the leadership of Dr. Kobusinje, and the statistics that they raised were quite worrying. 9,000 people. That's 3 times the number that was reported by police. So in terms of the interventions and the numbers that are pretty much very worrying and varying at the same time, how are you able to get it right?
At the end of the day, what we should all focus on is, whether we have 10,000 or 3,000, you find that you should have 0. You should have no one dying on the roads. So the statistics, the variation in statistics is brought about by lack of a vital registration system in Uganda.
Okay.
But despite that, our interventions are informed by which road user group is more at risk. Is it the pedestrians? Is it vehicle occupants? And I like putting this one out there. In countries, for example, like UK or Sweden, you find that vehicle occupants are the majority of people who die. But in countries like Uganda, you find it's pedestrians accounting for 40% of road crash fatalities. So our interventions are informed by that. We need to make intervention for pedestrians and for motorcycle riders. Whereas interventions in a country like UK will be about vehicle occupants wearing seat belts, having good vehicles on the road. I mean, vehicles which are inherently safe on the road.
Roadworthy vehicles.
Inherently safe. They are designed to be safe. They have I don't know how many airbags these days, and when you get a crash in there, you're most likely to die.
Right.
Yeah. So our actions are informed by what's the biggest group which is at risk. That's what informs our interventions.
Okay. All right.
Now that you're here, let's just put this across to you, so that because you're explaining that, you said it's very important for us as a country and as Ugandans to understand the things that we need for our safety on the road. And we don't you think that many times we have come up with, we have sat down on a round table and come up with solutions on how to help this number go down, but for some reason, some could be political, they have been washed under. Because, for example, seatbelts. There was a time in this country where seatbelts were something. You couldn't sit in a taxi, even just a simple taxi, and have your seatbelts, or a taxi that didn't have seatbelts. Now we have taxis with seatbelts that no one ever uses. So, do you think that sometimes you sit down on a round table, come up with solutions, but are watered down by politics and other things?
Not necessarily. When we sit down at the round table, we come up with regulations and policies, which, when we have just maybe introduced them, we go out and do an intensive campaign, sensitization, enforcement. What should be that when we have produced a policy or a regulation and we have informed the general public, we expect the general public to keep following this. You talk about seat belts. I usually like giving an example. Most people who don't wear seat belts are actually not taxi users, they're individual vehicle owners. I don't need to be in your home on a Monday morning and tell you wear your seat belt before you go to work. This is something you should know. You should know that's in the law, that is, we assume you went to a driving school before you got your permit, and therefore you are informed of all these regulations. Therefore, it's not really about police enforcement when it comes to seatbelts, especially because seatbelts really should come naturally to you. Maybe things that you can say are somehow maybe interference in politics are things like drunk driving and helmets for motorcycle riders and other passengers. Those are a bit problematic for the public and politics. So, but the thing like seatbelts, there are different factors which you can control yourself as an individual.
All right.
Mr. Asi, what other initiatives are you as Vivo Energy, besides this summit that is coming up, what others do you have in plans to help road safety in Uganda?
Yes, before I come to our initiatives, let me add on what Mr. Amanyeri just said. I think education is the first step of the process of leading people to have behavioral change and better behaviors on the road. Education is paramount. I believe we should start with school children. And as a company, we are doing that. We want to educate children about road safety and then go into sensitization for all road users. Because like Mr. Amanyeri said, if you believe that when your seatbelt is good for you and it protects you, it protects your children, you will naturally do it. But sometimes people are not mindful of the dangers of their behaviors. So they need people who really believe that every accident can be prevented to come and tell them, to come and educate them. So this forms part of the things we do at Vivo Energy. So educating school children, training drivers. We annually train boda riders, we train bus drivers, we train taxi drivers to make sure that they know what the skills they need are for having a defensive driving that will prevent them from having accident. So we do this training. We also have, you talked about it, our TODECO program, which is our initiative to use TV as a vehicle to educate the population. And we went ahead and came out with what we call our TODECO caravan, because we believe not everybody have access to TV. So we are bringing the campaign to the road users on the road. So we have an annual TODECO caravan. And TODECO is a multiple award-winning program. Last year we won an award in France for that initiative. And I'm very proud to share that we deeply believe that every accident is preventable. We strongly believe that every death on the road is one too many, and we have to do something about it.
Last year when we were going through the TODECO campaign, like you said, as Vivo, you have an initiative to teach the drivers on how to use these roads, the truck drivers, as well as the border users. And I remember when we were going through it, there was a lot of blame game, everyone pointing fingers at the other. The trucks don't respect us. The border guy says those ones ride like fools on the road and everything. Do you feel that by the end of most of these initiatives that you come up with, do you feel that there is change, or do we need to I don't know, just block one road one day and just say, people, we're not going to do this unless this is enforced? Do you feel that after all these initiatives that you go out, do you see some change on the roads? Do you see some change with the drivers, the border riders? Because there would be no use for us to keep running these initiatives if people are not picking up anything from them.
Yeah. As you know, education and sensitizations are long-term programs. And there is a saying that says, you don't need to succeed before you persevere. We believe it will yield results one day, so we have to keep on doing it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the result. I'm sure there are changes. There are people who change their behaviors because of that. And the right example is our own business. We are running a fleet of more than 200 trucks, and we can drive 1 million kilometers a year without accident.
Wow.
It's happening
on the same roads.
On the same roads. So it pays out. It's working. We need to abide by it. We need to be committed and continue to sensitize and educate.
Mrs. G, there's a proposal to overhaul the school curriculum. Don't you think it's time that you put in some recommendations that maybe it's because we're beginning with secondary schools now? This is, and Mr. Asi was talking about education. It's very, very important for especially the young kids to grow up knowing that putting on a seatbelt is very important for you. You know, we don't need to come up with another initiative when you're 32 to teach you to put on a seatbelt. Is it time that some some of those recommendations are pushed into the curriculum where, well, let's say from S4 towards upwards, you have to go through, driving lessons before you even get to getting your driving permit or license.
Not from S4, from P1.
Yeah.
And
P1 is a little bit earlier.
P1, from P1, because we have the books that we produced for P1 to P4, this is what I'm telling you. Oh. And we are in discussion with the Ministry of Education how to introduce this starting from P1 to P4. When we talk about S4, we are talking about drivers. We don't teach them how to drive. We teach people how to use the roads.
Okay.
The teaching how to drive is in driving schools. But when you are going to schools, secondary schools, normal secondary schools and primary schools, you should teach their pupils and students on how to use the road. So, walk on the right and not on the left, look out for this, look out for that while you're on the road. And this is something we are trying to do with the Ministry of Education. We have a member one member of the Council from Ministry of Education. So we are going to introduce it and put into the curriculum for at least starting from P1. And by the way, primary school children and secondary school children, they are the most vulnerable group of road users that we have in this country, even the world over. So it's about teaching them how to use the roads, not necessarily how to drive. Because when they are going to drive, then they'll go to a driving school and be taught how to drive. Okay. But when they already know how to use the road, because even when you're a driver, at any one time you're not in that car. You're not in that car forever. You get out, you become pedestrians, so you should know how to use the road without the vehicle.
Mr. Ronald, before we head on to Mr. Asi, law enforcement in the country has always been a challenge. They always make a joke and say that, we have the most amazing policies across East Africa, but they're implemented in Rwanda. But in terms of law enforcement and road safety, where is that challenge? Where does the exact challenge lie in? Because it's not like we don't know. You and I, all of us here, we use the roads. And you'll stand at a traffic point. The lights are clearly red, but we'll see border riders still, passing by. And of course, we all know the challenges and we all know the consequences of that. So why are we having a major challenge in implementing road safety and enforcing the same on our roads in this day and age? Can you pinpoint at one challenge that you're facing?
The biggest challenge actually that we are facing is lack of awareness. Most of the road users don't know what they are supposed to do. Mr. Asi mentioned it, that getting behavioral change it's a result of perseverance. You have to campaign, you have to educate constantly until you get that change. And we have an example of HIV/AIDS in this country that you're referring to. It took us over 20 years, 30 years to get to see the results. So we have to do the same thing with road users and motorcycle riders in particular. I know where you're coming from with that. And it is we need to inform motorcycle riders. A lot of them actually are not informed. They actually don't. I like telling people that maybe 80% of them don't know they are committing an offense. So we need to educate them, and thereafter the campaigns like Vivo does with them become very helpful to us as a country. And then the other thing that we have been facing is low penalties. The penalties for violation of traffic regulations have been very low because they're in currency point, and the last law was enacted in 1998. So they have been very low. So what we have done is that we're introducing harsher penalties. That bill was read in Parliament for the first time last week. The Minister presented it. So we are going to introduce stiffer penalties for all traffic offences, including some where people will not be allowed to be fined, but they will go directly to custodial sentences, 5 years, 10 years.
Mr. Asi, in terms of just ensuring that law enforcement on our roads becomes a reality, do you think there's need of, maybe for the police to have more manpower, so to speak? Because we drive on these roads and we see that there are critical points where we can't see any police day in, day out, and they're critical points, accident points, so to speak. So do you think that would help, so to speak? Because we all know it's just like raising a child. If you put the road away, this child would go, wary. So could that be the ultimate solution, increasing the numbers of the law enforcers and the police, traffic police on our roads? Could that be?
It will obviously help, but that's clearly not the ultimate solution, because we need to have processes around the people. So of course increasing the manpower will help a lot, but there are other processes that needs to be in place. Like Mr. Maniere said, the penalties should be, enough to discourage people from committing offenses, and it should be a process that is supported by everyone. And I think manpower is key, budget availability, because they need tools, they need guns, they need cameras. So availing resources, financial resources are also important to come in here. And of course, that ability to deploy everywhere in every part of the country to make sure that we track and we actually sentence every offense is very important.
Okay.
Maybe to add on that before we leave that point, one of the challenges in enforcement is that some urban authorities need to take on their role of being traffic wardens. The traffic police is there to enforce the law, but you should have traffic wardens in Kampala, for example, employed by the urban authority, KCCA, which directs traffic, which should be at those lights, which should be at junctions, which should be at roundabouts, and the police should go back to their commandant, which is enforcing the law which is in place. With the current numbers, if the urban authorities in every urban area in this country recruited the urban wardens, the traffic wardens, as it is in the law, they are supposed to recruit traffic wardens, then the police would be relieved, and you'll see a significant change in enforcement. Because these days during peak hour, you will not find a policeman looking at whether the driver has a permit because of the traffic congestion. So we need to relieve them, and then they'll do their job very well.
Okay. What does this partnership mean to the ministry? Vivo coming on board for this summit, and of course there are other initiatives. How much weight does it take off?
No, it takes off a lot of weight actually. I received 2 calls over the weekend from people who wanted to be part of this summit, and it wouldn't have been there if Vivo wasn't in it, because so we coordinate different stakeholders. We have different key stakeholders, and to us it means that Vivo are playing their part. I'm sure you've heard the saying that, road safety is everyone's responsibility, it's a shared responsibility. So Vivo is contributing to that shared responsibility. They're taking on their responsibility as a partner, as road users. We have NTV. It's not just, I thought we'd talk about what is mean for NTV to be part of this, because NTV is part of this. So everyone is putting in what they can, and we are very happy about that. We have been with Vivo from the beginning of Twedeco up to now. We're in the 3rd year now. And we usually encourage people to come to us, because sometimes people pass along the wrong message, and without even informed data, informed statistics, people make interventions which are not really necessary. So it means to us, it means that it means a lot. Vivo relieves us, because that is saved money which we can now put in something else when they sponsor events like this one.
Okay. With driving schools in this country, you find very many people that have a driving license, but they have only learned how to move a car. What is the ministry doing about that? Because it's a shame to see that someone goes to supposedly a driving school. They are paying bribes. None of them goes for all those tests. They end up having a driver's license. They can't even read a simple children crossing signage to make sure that they can avoid all these statistics you were seeing is because people have driving permits, but they only know how to move their car. They don't even see the signs. They're not following any single rule on the road.
Okay, driving schools, you're right. But we introduced, this is what I'm talking about, we introduced regulations for driving schools, I think, in 2012. And these regulations for driving schools require that people should be trained on theory testing for 30 hours, practical testing for 60 hours. That is probably maybe 3 months. But of course, one of the measures now we're going to introduce is that there is no other person who is supposed to take a student to be tested unless they are from a licensed driving school. So we license driving schools as a ministry. We inspect them for license. We have requirements for them, what they should have, training grounds, classrooms, and everything, and the materials they should be following a certain curriculum. All those are things that we check before we license them. Of course, you still have some bad apples here and there. You find driving schools on the road, but once in a while we conduct operations and remove these from the road. Eventually, because this law hasn't been in place even for 10 years, and sometimes you need these laws when they are around for some time, that's when you find everyone compliant. So we shall have compliance. We hope to get 100% compliance probably by 2022. That will be 10 years since the regulation came out. So it takes time. So we shall get there.
All right.
We shall computerize the connection between driving schools to driving tests to the driving permit issuance body.
Okay.
Mr. Asi, I'll just throw this to you, but I know you will be politically correct about this one. Maybe the person who hammer it well is Mr. Ronald. But do you think politics, the game of politics, is watering down your efforts to fighting, fatalities on the road and ensuring that we have road safety on all roads across the country, especially now that we know, this matter is actually running out of hand, getting out of hand, so to speak. Mulago has dedicated an entire ward for boda injuries and people who, have been in one way or another been affected by that on the roads. So do you think politics, the game of politics, is watering down the efforts? Because you've always talked about taming the boda industry, but seemingly we're losing this battle.
Yeah, I think it's a problem that everybody should embrace, and I will not blame politics especially. I believe there are various steps that we need to go through to make sure that boda industry is controlled, regulated, and people abide by the law. And like I said earlier, it starts with education and then enforcement. Those riders know that this activity is their breadwinning activity. If they know after some offenses that they will lose that driving permit that gives them the possibility to win the bread for their families, they will be more careful. So we need to come with laws and enforcement that make sure that people know they will no longer be able to do the activity if they don't abide by the law. The consequence needs to be enforced, and they need to be, strong enough to change things.
Right.
So everybody needs to come around the table, and I would like to use this opportunity to call upon every stakeholders and every individual who believes that we can do something about it, who believes that road transport accidents can be prevented, to come on board, including politicians, to come and take commitments.
Including politicians. Mr. Ronald, you are on ground and you know the truths of the boda industry. Just the other day, actually last week, the boda conversations have been making headlines, and we did have a boda patron right here, and he mentioned that this industry is being run by bigwigs. Them that are supposed to be policy makers, them that are supposed to be law enforcers are the ones who run it. So where do we crack this? If we can't attack them that are the big heads and they're the ones who, pretty much run that particular economy, how do we crack this, shell, taming the boda industry?
Well, I'm not aware that it's run by the big shots of the big, I'm not aware of that, but I think what needs to be done is that everyone needs to take really responsibility for their actions. And if it is the politics, I've heard about the politics argument, and by the way, it is politics in the whole country. Over every type of politician likes to interfere in enforcement for the border laws because of their sheer numbers. But when you know that you have such a challenge like politics, then you go back to people taking individual responsibility for their actions. That's what he was talking about. Okay. Politics will not affect you if you know that they are going to maybe take away my permit. Because when they take away that permit, the politician will not be there. If you're a passenger, for example, and you're going to wear a helmet, think about, and you don't want to wear a helmet, think about your own life, because the politics will not be there. So when you take individual responsibility, you become proactive in your actions, in the way you use that road, then politics will have no effect. Similarly, political leaders in the country have to show that responsibility and stop interfering in enforcement of regulations and the laws of road safety.
Okay.
We shall not hide away from that. It is there. Everyone knows it. So, please, they need to stay away.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Asi, any last remarks before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I would like to thank you and use this opportunity to invite everyone, and including decision makers, policy makers, key stakeholders, to join us in this summit and to join us in all the other initiatives that we are running to make sure that our roads in Uganda are a safer place to be.
Okay. When is the summit? Who is allowed to come in? Is this an invite only, or who is allowed to be on this round table?
Yeah, the summit is tomorrow from 7 to 12:30 p.m. from 7 a.m. It's an invite only event, and people will get the invitations. The rest can follow on NTV. I'm sure you've given us airtime, haven't you?
Yes.
So the rest can follow on NTV what is happening and follow the discussion and make contribution. So it is a way of sensitization also. When people see this thing on NTV being discussed and people providing solutions and proposals, then people at home will take this up. I hope it will enter their brains and they know how to use the road. Okay. So we call upon all stakeholders to come to those ones we have invited. Let them not miss. The ones we have not invited, please forgive us, but follow the proceedings on TV. And we can also say
and
other
also
stakeholders and social media accounts of NTV, Ministry of Works, and Vivo Energy. So we need to call on other stakeholders apart from Vivo Energy. Other stakeholders come and join us and do something else, probably not a summit, but there are always things to do in road safety. So that would be my last remark.
Okay. I don't know where the suggestion box is. I have a proposal of mine. I keep complaining. I keep telling people I think we can avoid very many accidents on the road here in Uganda if only people learned one rule. Right is where you overtake from, because I think most border accidents are happening on the left. The border people just my friends just know how to overtake on the left, and most of the times they're ending up in people opening doors, and there are a lot of accidents. And even when you see Ugandans, we have beautiful roads. You go to Entebbe Road where you have 2 lanes and there's a slow person on the left, where you're thinking, well, that's where you should be, and then suddenly he's on the right and people are forced to overtake on the left. So I think there's some just basic things that we should be able to learn in driving school that we're not applying on the roads, and this is leading to a lot of problems. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us, the Managing Director, Vivo Energy Uganda, Mr. Gilbert Asi. Thank you very much. And the Secretary, National Road Safety Council, that is Mr. Ronald Amanyire. We're looking forward to the summit tomorrow. It will definitely be live on NTV. So if you have any additions or proposals or suggestions, the suggestion box will let you know where it will be. But first, for starters, watch the show tomorrow and watch the summit as well, so that you can pick up on something, and let's educate ourselves. Let's not wait for these summits all the time for us to pick up on things that could save a neighbor's life or your life as well. So I think that's it from me. I'm not going to start advising you on how to drive your cars and be safe on the road. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. We're looking forward to the summit. Morning at NTV continues. That's what we had for our Kickstarter conversation, in case you're wondering what it's all about. The National Road Safety Summit, it's happening tomorrow from 7 a.m. It's an invite only, but it will be live here on NTV, so you'll be able to watch. And like they said, social media platforms, NTV, Vivo Energy, and the National Road Safety Council social media pages will be active, so you can share your input as well, so that they can take it on. They can take up on it. Next up, we're going to be getting into our Tech Notes conversation. Morning at NTV continues right after this.
You're watching Morning at NTV.
Road safety remains a challenge in our country. Vivo Energy Uganda and NTV, together with Ministry of Works and Transport and Uganda Police, bring to you the second Road Safety Summit 2019.
This year's summit, we're talking about action. Because last year we had a similar summit, but this year the association has come strongly out, because we say